Oh my god, it's another Legacy of Kain fanfiction. Why? Because Legacy of Kain saved my fucking life. How? Well, I won't elaborate because I feel my personal life is completely irrelevant to what I do on YouTube. I'm just a guy who reads stuff. That's all you need to know. But should I get more subscribers in the future? Like, I don't know, 1,000? Meh, I don't know. That's a pipe dream, but should it happen, I'll do a Q&A. You'll find out more about me, but who cares about me? I'm just a guy. This is a fan fiction about brotherly love. Speaking of which, maybe someday I'll try to get my older brother, let's just call him Vegas, to read here with me. And if not, well, nothing I can do. Nosgoth, 510 years after the birth of Kain, in the dungeons of Kain's retreat.
Kain! Kain!
Shut up! He doesn't hear us. Raziel paced around the small pit. Try as he might to ignore Tyrell's screams, the stone walls amplified and echoed his voice so that he seemed to be shouting from every direction at once.
Kain! Please! Father! Let us out! Please!
Raziel covered his ears. His younger brother had been screaming for almost an hour, with no result. Every time he tried to talk sense into him, his good advice went ignored. Neither of them had any idea how long they had been trapped in this pit. At first, Raziel tried to count off the hours by making carvings in the walls with a sharp stone. When he started to mark the second day, Tyrell attacked him mercilessly, took the stone and threw it out of the pit, screaming at him about the uselessness of keeping track when everything down here remained the same, as if etching wounded him personally. Raziel then tried keeping track of time in his head. He would go mad if he could not keep his mind occupied. A week or more might have passed since Kain threw them down there. The bottom of the pit was caked with the aftermath of many fights. They could never be more than 10 feet away from each other. They were miserable. Desperate for silence, Raziel sat on the floor and put his head between his knees, muttering curses under his breath. Maybe if he ignored him, Tyrell would wear himself out. Moments later, a foot slammed into the side of his face, knocking him over and sending a spurt of blood flying from his mouth. Spitting, he scrambled to his feet in a rage.
Say that again!
Tyrell dared.
This is your fault, pig-headed!
Raziel's eyes bulged. He ducked, narrowly avoiding Tyrell's fist. Tyrell's knuckles crashed into the brick with an explosion of dust. The impact left behind a cannonball-sized crater.
Skinny shit!
Tyrell snapped. He turned too fast on his heel and swung at Raziel, bruising his ribs. Raziel scowled, just like Tyrell to swing first and think later. Taking advantage of his brother's poor balance, Raziel struck him hard across the jaw, sending him reeling. His head smacked against the wall with a crack. Tyrell fell to one knee against the wall, gasping for breath. Raziel's face split in a grin, though he had breathed too heavily. Their vampire bodies had no need for breath. Old habits died hard. They were both exhausted, and their bodies only knew one way to cope. As Tyrell struggled to stand, Raziel felt sure of his victory. The older brother triumphant again. Tyrell's size and strength were still no match for his quick wits. Tyrell stumbled up, bow-legged, their eyes like two bulls about to butt heads. Raziel fearlessly stared him down. This had to be a bluff. The scratch of Tyrell's heavy breathing filled the pit like a saw blade. His muscles tensed. Raziel's bravado faltered. He knew that reckless look. Tyrell.
Wise-ass prick!
Bricks cracked as his back slammed into the wall. The impact squeezed the air from his lungs with a splatter of blood. Raziel tore at him viciously, digging his fingernails into his back. He grabbed Tyrell by the head and jabbed his thumb into his eye until he released him. Tyrell retreated briefly, spurred on by the rage, and grappled him.
I'll snap your neck!
Raziel dug his heels into the hard ground, pushing back with all his might.
Stop being so stupid! Burn in hell!
Getting under him, Raziel jabbed his shoulder into Tyrell's gut and threw him to the ground. He retreated to the other side of the pit, leaving himself room to flee if necessary. Though he knew it was a useless endeavor, he tried again to reason with him before he could get to his feet.
This is pointless! We can't kill each other, so why are we fighting?
Terrell shook himself off and sneered.
You're not strong enough to kill me.
Raziel recoiled in disgust. He was so livid he could hardly speak.
You imbecilic asinine! If you would shut up and let me think!
Nobody's impressed by your clever tongue. That's why you're down here. You're entitled.
And you're merely a dog licking your master's boots.
At least it's honorable. I'd rather be a dog than a self-satisfied princess. This comes as no surprise,
drawled Kain. Raziel and Terrell looked up. Some 20 feet above them, their master stood at the top of the pit into which he had thrown them. He looked extraordinarily displeased. The pit was sealed with steel bars. Their younger brother Zephon crouched on the opposite side, holding a torch and looking down on them with a shadowy grin. Kain's marble face took on a pale golden hue in the flickering torchlight. As there were no lights at the bottom of the pit, his body seemed to glow. From below, the two brothers could see the handle of a sword mounted on Kain's back. The Soul Reaver. The sight of that infamous sword ordinarily brought fear into Raziel's heart. After this long and unjust confinement to this filthy hole, anger made him reckless.
Sire!
Terrell exclaimed, relieved. Raziel clenched his fists to the bone.
Let us out of here, Kain. This is humiliating.
Terrell gestured submissively.
Please, pay him no mind. He does not know his place. An ironic statement from you, little brother,
growled Raziel.
You're both right,
Kain admonished icily.
Neither of you know your place, since you're capable of settling your own disputes with words.
He produced a short sword. The light from the braziers gave the steel qualities of fire. Raziel lost his swagger. Though Kain had been harsh with him on a few occasions, he never expected this. Dangling by the hilt, Kain dropped the sword into the pit, where it stuck point first into the ground. Raziel retreated a step. He looked at Kain in abject disbelief. To his horror, Kain seemed pleased by the fear in his eyes. He could not understand it. They were Kain's sons, one day to be his lieutenants. As yet they were still learning, too young to be of much use. Until this moment, Raziel had never experienced the magnitude of his maker's inhumanity. Even Terrell hesitated, too frightened to raise his voice. Raziel protested.
You can't be serious.
What I have made, I can also destroy, child. To the victor goes the spoils.
His mouth fell open wordlessly. Never in his life had Kain treated him with such callousness. And for what? A petty rivalry. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw Terrell free the sword from the earth. Raziel backed against the wall.
What are you doing?
This time, Terrell met him with no animosity. His eyes were cold and hungry.
Sorry, brother. At least one of us will leave this pit.
They circled each other. The short sword extended Terrell's reach, leaving Raziel with barely any room to maneuver. He ducked as the sword sliced into the wall, taking with it a few black hairs. Terrell wrenched the blade free and slowly turned to face him. He spat on the ground.
You're trembling, brother. Where's your clever tongue now?
Dust and debris fell into his eyes as the sword chopped into the brick above his head. He shook his head, blinded. The sharpened steel sliced through his side as he tried to escape. Clutching the wound, he bared his fangs and steeled his resolve.
If this is what you want.
Terrell raised his sword. As he brought it down, Raziel quickly ducked to one side and grabbed Terrell's sword arm with both hands. His jasmine eyes hardened as he twisted the bone and felt it crack. Terrell screamed, and he tried to gouge his eyes. Shutting his eyes, Raziel elbowed him in the face, shattering his nose, and bore down on his arm with all of his strength until the fingers sprang open and the sword clattered. He delivered another jab with his elbow, knocking Terrell back and granting him a short window to grab the weapon of his salvation. Terrell could recover himself. Raziel was on top of him. Before Terrell could recover himself, Raziel was on top of him. Armed and in tight quarters, his agility made him unstoppable against his lumbering brother. He soon had Terrell backed against a wall with a blade at his throat. Terrell grimaced pitifully at his brother, holding on to his broken arm, defenselessly, face splattered with blood and dirt. After a few seconds, Terrell's eyes turned towards the opening of the pit. Raziel knew he was looking at Kain, pleading for his life with his eyes. He waited patiently for Kain to call him off. Kain started laughing. Bristling, Raziel backed away and hurried the sword into the air. The sword hilt flew over the top and embedded itself in the high wall over the pit. Zephon sprang back with a yipe. Raziel faced Kain.
Keep your damn sword! I won't do this!
Kain had stopped laughing. He looked so much angrier than Raziel expected, almost as if he had thrown the sword at him rather than the empty wall.
If that is your choice, then you will both starve.
As Kain vanished from sight, Raziel ran to the other side of the pit.
What? Kain! Kain! You can't leave us here! Kain! Kain!
There was no response. He turned to his other brother, enraged.
Zephon, let us out of here!
Zephon kicked some dirt into the pit. Raziel sputtered and rubbed at his face as the filthy earth showered his head. Pleased, Zephon stuck his nose in the air and strutted after Kain. On the opposite end of the pit, Terrell swallowed hard.
That was a good throw,
he said bashfully. Raziel weakly beat his fist against the wall. Somehow he hoped Kain would see his refusal to kill Terrell as an admission of humility and release them. He would not have killed Terrell in either case. Gasping shakily, he stared at the steel bars that bound them to this prison.
I don't understand. Why is he doing this?
Terrell shrugged with his good shoulder.
Test?
Raziel only closed his eyes.
If this is a test, I don't know the answer.
He heard Terrell limping toward him.
Do you have any idea how hard it is for the rest of us to earn half the favor he gives to you? The time for you to pull your weight is long overdue. You're weak.
Raziel turned on him, stunned.
I just spared your life.
Terrell grunted and tried to pop the bones of his arm back into place.
So? I would have pleaded on your behalf.
Why?
Same reason you did.
Guiltily, Raziel lowered his eyes. He had been foolish. Tearing the sleeve from his shirt, he used it to help Terrell set his broken bones.
I'm sorry, brother. I don't know how we got to this state.
Cream puff.
Raziel glared at him. Terrell chuckled. Shaking his head, Raziel looked through the steel bars.
Does he really intend to starve us?
Despite his faithfulness towards Kain, Raziel could see that hunger and strife had tempered his loyalty. He decided to change the subject.
When he lets us out of here, I'll be different from now on. I promise, I'll earn my keep.
They sat down on opposite sides of the pit. Though their relationship was turbulent to say the least, his younger brother knew as well as any of his siblings that Raziel kept his promises. Eyeing the sword, Raziel wondered if it would come down. He didn't know if it would be of any help. Perhaps later he would think of something.
What do you suppose he found in that oracle's cave?
Terrell asked conversationally.
I don't know. Nothing good I can imagine. I've never seen him this temperamental before.
Ill omens?
For our sake, I hope not.
Frowning, he added,
You don't think it has anything to do with us?
Maybe it does. What could we do about it? If Kain can't change his destiny, what hope have we? I just want to get out of this pit.
For once, I agree.
Maybe he'll let us out for good behavior.
Terrell looked at him. Misbehaving is what got them there in the first place. Anyway, it sounded better than killing each other.
If you do, I will.
No more wise-ass remarks.
Raziel nodded. You too. Terrell chuckled in his deep voice.
Sometimes I forgot you're more vicious than you look. After we get out of here, I want a rematch.
You'll get one, he sighed, closing his eyes. Maybe now he could have some silence. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button. But if you didn't, click the dislike button. But if you really love this video, you can do me a huge favor by clicking the subscribe button, sharing this video with your friends, and of course, checking out my other videos.